Alright. Hello everyone. This is Andreas Pop Culture Talk. Today is another latest Andreas Pop Culture Talk retrospective slash review. Uh it's on Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome, directed by George Miller. Directed by George Miller, another director, which I cannot come up, starring Mad Max himself, Mel Gibson, and Tina Turner. Now, this time, Max is still traveling throughout the Australian desert when he managed to stumble upon the Butter Town, a trading post of all kinds of printables. His supplies have been stolen from him. He has no choice but to seek shelter in this outpost of technology where civilization has long gone. It is ruled by Entity and Master Blaster, which leads to a lot of tension between the two leaders. Max will fight in an arena called the Thunderdome on the behalf of Anti, where he will have to defeat the Master Blaster. But when the fight is won, he's banished and chased back into the desert, where he soon meets a group of teenagers that survived a plane crash during the war, and they believe that he is their former pilot, Captain Walker. Some of the teenagers leave to find their fabled tomorrow land, leaving Mad Max no choice but to save them from the desert and from Entity's Butter Town. Now, as has been discussed, I think Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome is the least favorable or non-favorite Mad Max movie in the 5 chapters of the Mad Max saga. Beyond Thunderdome attempts to bring the saga full circle, as is some resembles of civilization and organization begins to rise from the ashes, and the cities become populated once again, hopefully setting the scene for the battles and action in the forthcoming Fury Road, the fourth installment in the Mad Max series. Thunderdome does suffer from a slight Hollywoodization, and many will recognize a few elements straight out of the action movie handbook, probably at the insistence of the studio. Like in the second movie, there is also colonies of innocent, but this colony is sheltered from the rest of the world, living in oasis hidden in the desert. They have food and they have water, but they also have stories they have been passed down for them to remember. They have not become savages as suggested in The Lord of Flies, a very interesting story. Rather than the stories have given them not only some imbalance of the civilization, but also hope in the future. And in a way, it's a contrast between the society of the Butter Town, where law may be brutal force, but it's still a law, and the Oasis, which is a census of the land of a noble savage. However, the spirit of Mad Max is still here. The struggle to survive against the odds in the ever-changing world is still prominent in this film. Many have, befriended the lack of decent car chases in the same way as the previous 2 films, which is understandably reasonable. However, it must be remembered that this is 15 years after the fall of civilization, and oil is a non-existent product technically, so no car chases here, really, because of oil scattish. Sure, it's probably the least good of the Mad Max films, but it's still an entertaining one as heck. It may be a little more Hollywood, which is a bad thing. Maybe not, sometimes, if it's done right, but for Mad Max, it didn't achieve the overcoming of the Hollywoodization than the first 2. The music is overbearing at times, but some of the attempts and jokes were very cheap and very American lies as well. But yet, this is the only half of the film. Miller resigned himself to just directing the action scenes following the tragic death of his friend, producer Brian Kennedy. So the rest of the film was put in the hands of George Ogilvie, the second director, who is taking somewhat half of the film, nearly escaping the burn time with his life. Max discovers the young survivors of the plane crash who has delivered their own little tribe society. It's here that the film goes to a bit pure pan, where it's just down to Miller's absence or not. Beyond Thunderdome lacks the edge of his predecessors. In fact, I haven't brought up that this is a PG-13 film, not a rated R like its 2 predecessors. So, occasionally dip into traditional mainstream fantasy fare and losing focus of its antagonist's motivation. Furthermore, I think Thunderdome is definitely the most dialogue-heavy and story-driven Mad Max of all of them, despite being the weakest of them. This comes to the card and role-based stunts action that's really lacking in this film. And Thunderdome, though arguably has multiple lines, such as "Who runs Buttertown?", "Master Blaster," "This is Thunderdome," "2 men enter, 1 man leaves." I Again, I think the biggest issue with this film, however, is the pacing. I think this film really drags in certain parts. I think particularly the second half when we get into the kids. It does have some pretty boring pockets and where nothing really happens. The whole act with Max venturing out and coming across the village of the Trinity is part of that drags on far too long, and I find myself sometimes skipping in this particular scene. The scene itself with the imaginary movie screen and the kids reacting to its creative and is another great example of Miller's powerful visual imagination. I mean, come on. The guy made Free Roll in the 60s, so I definitely understand why. Anyway, now, this is one of the strangest movie sequels I have reviewed here. I mean, I heard things about it being the weakest, but it's very unique. I do applaud for that. It's nothing like the first two, and I think that's maybe the high point about this film today. It's not like the first two films, it's a different film. Just like Fury Road is different from the three films. And same thing with Fury Road, very different from Fury Road. But it doesn't need to be. I think a lot of Fury Road fans hate this film, or in general, the Mad Max fans hate this film a little too harsh. Yes, it's the weakest, but it's not the worst film. I think it's still a decent film. But because it's unlike the movie that hasn't aged very well, it's definitely a product of its time with its 80s nostalgia dripping all over it, particularly with Tina Turner being part of the film and her music license of this film as well, which people remember. Yes, it's slow with pretty anticlimactic final chase sequence in which the Road Warriors ending chase sequence was far superior, definitely with the improvisation of the motorbike launch shot, which was a complete accident. So, I gotta say, just wrapping up the review of Beyond the Thunderdome, one of the main faults that has to be cited with this one is that the last 30 minutes or so are basically taken straight from the Road Warrior. Meaning, what I'm trying to say here is the ending with the change is very similar to the Road Warrior. The car chase, the speech about how strangers help them to actually induce how they were to get out of the second installment. It still is very creative, and it was a wonderful memento. I love the whole society that finds Max in the desert. Well, the bar town, not the whole kid section. I love the reciting of their foundation. I love their downlink. I love Master Blaster, and Tina Turner was actually really cool too. I definitely think she's the memorable villain here. I wish she had more to do in this film because the first act of her and the whole bar town was very unique and interesting, and it made the film feel like a Mad Max film. So, still, the film delivers where respected. The action scenes, again, we get the tanker being chased down by an army of baddies and the doomsday vehicles. Again, we were treated to some awe-inspiring stunt that hold up even today. It's the weakest of the original. It's the weakest of the original trilogy. I had to agree, but hugely entertaining stuff. So, and then for the 40th anniversary for Beyond the Thunderdome, I highly recommend watching it, at least for just the completions of the Mad Max saga. So, I just want to thank everyone for joining me today for the 40th anniversary review of Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome. More to come. And thank you so much for listening to this podcast/review. Ciao. Bye.